Hello.
Hi, everyone. Oh, hello. Welcome back to another episode of Ancient Warfare Answers. I'm Murray, the assistant editor, and this is Jasper, the editor of Ancient Warfare. We have another question from one of our listeners. I've gone with Jasper's listeners as opposed to my own Ancient Warfare enthusiast. But this one is, did the Romans downplay their navy before the First Punic War?
Yeah, did they? Did they though?
Did
I
they?
think he's asking about Polybius, because the whole story of the Romans didn't do anything. That's again, this is all about perception. The idea is, First Punic War breaks out, and the Romans go, "The sea? What's this sea thing you're talking about? We've only been fighting on land." And then they suddenly built an enormous fleet and put
in very fast time.
Yes, in 60 days they built 100 ships or something, and put the boarding bridge on it, and everybody goes, "Oh, the boarding bridge is just." It's presented as the Romans turn everything into a land battle, so therefore you make a boarding bridge, clunk, and therefore your naval battle has now become a land battle. There's this, and that comes back time and again, and it's always, the Athenian fleet of the 5th century is held up as the example, the epitome of naval warfare in the ancient world, where you have these sleek, fast triremes zipping about, ramming each other, and doing various, sailing around and ramming other ships in the rear, or sailing just streaking by and pulling in their oars at the right time, so that the trireme cuts off the oars of the other ship, and well maintained, very fast ships with a very well trained crew, and just about anything else is sort of described as they turned it into a land battle, which is to say, anything else is therefore, when you have archers and slingers and javelin people on board of ships who throw projectiles, and then you board, and then you take the ships. And of course, the Romans are seen as the epitome of this, because they're landlubbers and they can't build ships. And then Polybius's story is they were unfamiliar with the sea, and then they captured or found a Carthaginian ship that had been stranded, and they copy it and they build ships. And suddenly, over a period of a couple decades, they managed to defeat the then reigning champions of naval warfare in the Western Mediterranean, the Carthaginians. So if anybody is downplaying the role of Rome at sea before the First Punic War, it's Polybius and not the Romans, although we can argue another time about whether Polybius is an apologist for the Romans or just a certain Roman family. The Romans had actually been at sea for, not very much, but they had some deployed some naval units before the First Punic War. They'd had added triremes to their fleet in the late 4th century, and yes, then in 264 the First Punic War breaks out, and in 261 they decide to build a new fleet of quinquiremes, which this type of ship may indeed have been new for the Romans, and whether it's a whole new thing, and it's all like, oh, they're so inexperienced and they're building terrible ships. It's important to remember that yes, they found a ship is a story. It might also be that they had just allied themselves with Syracuse, who knew very well how to build ships. And it would not be strange if some Syracusans came over to Rome and helped them set up production of ships. And now, whether this whole boarding bridge thing, that's kind of interesting. You can follow Polybius and say, okay, the Romans had bad ships and they they found a way to compensate for their badly trained and not very well built ships, namely this boarding bridge, so that when a Carthaginian ship came too close, they could just board it and deal with the ship that way. And that's a traditional explanation. And if you want to read more about that, I recommend you read Ancient Warfare 13.6, the last article by Paul McDonald Staff before he passed away, where he explains exactly how this works. A while ago, we actually had another article by Krista Steinby in issue 12.4, which actually argues that this boarding bridge fits perfectly in a Hellenistic tradition of inventing devices. Starts with actually Thucydides, who talks about grapnels and other ways of reinforcing triremes and helping with boarding and close range fighting in the harbor of Syracuse in the Sicilian expedition during the Peloponnesian War. And then there's all kinds of other examples in this period of, putting stuff on ships, modifying ships. You could see the whole the gigantism of the 4, the 5, the 6, the 7, up to 40 as an exponent of that. And so then the Roman idea of putting a boarding bridge on is just another way of adding some extra bit to their ships to make them more effective. It's also important to realize that they're only mentioned twice in the sources and don't seem to have been used for a very long time. And then, standard explanation is, the ships became extremely unstable from this one mast with a couple of planks around it. And I think Paul McDonald Staff is probably right in saying that can't have been it. If you put up sails on an ancient trireme, that is much more that raises the center of balance much more, and it catches the wind much more, which, if you want to talk about instability, more likely the Roman ships were slow because they were full of troops and supplies because they had to be taken to Sicily. And that messed with the balance of the ships. And perhaps the Romans just thought that the boarding bridge in the end was not the most effective way of dealing with the Carthaginian fleet. The point Steinby makes is, sorry, let me just finish. The point Steinby makes is that this is the boarding bridge is perhaps just, it fits the Romans very well because the Romans want to not just defeat an enemy, they want to crush the enemy. And if you have a boarding bridge with a pin in it so that you actually physically fix the enemy ship in place until you can board it and capture it, that is a more effective way than just racing after them trying to catch them.
Sure.
Go ahead, Murray. What do you want to say?
I was just going to say, so our answer is yes, or again, as you said at the start, that it could be just a matter of perception. It's always bothered me that the Tarentines brought Pyrrhus of Epirus into, asked him to invade Italy based on the fact that the Romans had breached a treaty with them in about 282 BC by sending warships into the Tarentine Gulf.
Yeah.
But if they didn't have a navy, then surely, if they were warships, they were terrible warships. And so it's kind of just a pretext, because it's like, well, you're a Greek city, you're a port city. Surely if the Roman fleet are terrible, these warships are going to be easily defeated by you. And, so, but
somebody was looking for an excuse, perhaps. Exactly. A whole other question. But yes, I think you could say that Polybius downplays matters a bit. That the quinqueremes were new, but the Romans certainly had some naval experience, and they had accidents at sea when it came to storms. And despite 2 centuries of experience, by the late 1st century BC, in the campaign against Sextus Pompeius, storms still raise entire fleets. So that doesn't seem to make a difference.
Yep.
All
There
right.
you go. There's another ancient warfare question answered. Oh, yes, that's what I meant to say.